How's it going, everyone? Mufara here. Welcome to Heliopolis Radio. I hope you enjoy the content. Peace and blessings to the people. How's it going, everyone? Mufara here. Welcome to Heliopolis Radio. Thank you for tuning in. I'm hoping you've had a good week thus far. We're going to be continuing with the Your Body Speaks Your Mind podcast series. It's by Deb Shapiro. The book is called Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro. And it's actually also, the subsection is understanding how your emotions and thoughts affect you physically. There's a lot of self-help books out there, and it's a very saturated industry, but this is one that definitely forced me to do some honest reflecting, and that's what I liked so much about this book. It was actually given to me as a gift for my birthday by a family friend, and I don't know what emotional state I must have been in to have warranted receiving this as a gift, but it was a gift indeed. And so, I'll just be sharing some of the chapters that I read from the book and some of the interesting points. I felt that the book forced me to be a bit more honest with myself and my personal reflections, and I think any book that does that is a pretty decent one. Obviously, that's my personal opinion, but let's just jump straight into it. So, the name of this chapter was The Language of Your Thoughts and Emotions, and it starts off by saying, "As you think, so you become. Your thoughts are seeds that germinate and grow. The seeds take root and begin to influence and shape the cell structures of your physical body." I would agree with that statement simply because we've seen in certain, when you're in a certain emotional state, a mental state of stress, anxiety, at least you can see examples of this. Your digestive system shuts down, your adrenal activity increases, you produce more cortisol simply because of the mental state that is invoking this, response within your body. And so, she also goes on to say that illness can be seen as a learning experience and an opportunity to deepen your relationship with yourself, which is very true, because, once you're ill, the body is a mechanism for you to carry out whatever functions you need to in daily living. When that's compromised, you have no choice. You have to figure out what's causing this internal disharmony within yourself. So she goes on to say the most common blocks are the negative attitudes that a lot of people carry around them all the time. And being a perpetrator of this myself, guilty as charged, your emotional baggage and your bullshit, it weighs down on you, and it starts to, people pick up on it. They pick up on your tendencies and your vibes, and they even, your honest friends will even call you out on it. So, she goes on to say that although such factors start within the mind, they quickly manifest in the body, becoming a stiff shoulder, a sluggish liver, potentially cancer, or any other illness. She also takes into consideration environmental factors and genetic influences. So with regards to environmental factors, she states that the immune system needs antigens to stimulate a response and build greater immunity. When confronted with an external factor such as a virus, there'll be little or no resistance from the immune system. So she encourages, nature has equipped us with an immune system that needs to be tested, essentially, and to develop itself and its resistance to any external factors that might affect it. And so, and also she states that chemical pollution is rising at an alarming rate in our internal and external environment, such as things as our foodstuff, it's creating long-term difficulties such as chemical intolerance. She goes on to state that we cannot treat our crops, animals, and air with chemicals and continue to pour chemical waste into the ecosystem. You can introduce some limits on the amounts of toxins you consume through foods that you eat and your lifestyle. She also says that you should be aware of the attitudes within yourself that stop you from caring for yourself and the environment. You have to want to make a difference, and the best place you can start is in your own home. This is not some go green bullshit, but really what it is just taking the practical steps to, to preserve your physical and mental well-being. We're ultimately living organisms on this planet that we live in harmony with the environment, and how we interact with that environment will have a effect on our well-being. With regards to the food and lifestyle, the food and the lifestyle, this is not about any fad that's out there or whatever, diet obsession that's there. It's just about trying to eat more sensibly, in terms of the quality of whatever your food preference is, and actually, continually being disciplined in that facet. Obviously, we know we have financial restrictions, we have a whole bunch of things, but trying your best to navigate around it, which starts with your own home, really. That's a very reasonable solution in my mind. And so, with regards to genetic influence, she states that diet, exercises, and lifestyle, all of which in turn create strength, resilience, and good health, thus counterbalancing the effects of genetic predisposition. We all have a genetic baggage. Sorry, not predisposition. We all have a genetic baggage that we carry from our family line, and it's just about how we handle that at best. If you know that diabetes runs in your family, then maybe considering a low GI diet, that's a practical solution you can take, rather than maybe eating and having a lifestyle in which you consume foodstuffs that are pro-diabetic and saying, it's just in the family. There are certain factors that you can take and you can control within yourself. She also states that saying things like, "I know I will get this illness because my mother had it, and so did my grandmother," it encourages a sense of fatalism, which is, it's unhealthy again. And the body hears and responds to your thoughts and words. So with regards to psycho-emotional factors, this is one where I was really kind of warped in. She states that emotional pain is just as real as physical pain, and long-held resentments such as anger, bitterness, hurt, fear, guilt, and shame all play a role in debilitating your energy. You may spend many years building a wall around your heart in order to protect it from being hurt, but in doing so, you also wall off your own feelings of love. And I didn't know that actually X-ray imaging provides evidence of periods of slow or minimal bone growth corresponding to times of isolation in a child's life. So it's interesting. I mean, especially with how emotional pain feels, being just as real as physical pain. We've seen in, instances of heartbreak where there is no physical pain or harm that's, inflicted, but the damage, the effects are so devastating. You start to think, this may be worse than physical pain itself. She also shares a personal story, which I found interesting. She stated that my mother had 4 children, of which I was the oldest. There was always a sibling who needed more attention than me, and my enduring impression is of neglect and of neglect of my emotional needs. In rejecting food, I was confirming the rejection I was feeling inside. And so, we all have different family dynamics, but it's interesting to see, not interesting, but it's powerful to see how these events, they leave a subconscious impression on how we end up acting and behaving in response to these events without not even being aware, unless you've done the personal reflections or the work internally. And so it's important, I think, especially if there's been any difficulties within, the childhood, within the family dynamics. And she also goes on to, in the next subsection called repressed, ignored, and denied. Every emotion that is repressed, inevitably due to our experience, every emotion that is repressed is inevitably due to our experience of love. Either being hurt and rejected by those that we love, or simply not being loved at all. And that's a tricky one because everyone, again, the family dynamics is different and the nature of love is different. So it's very subjective, but it's important to maybe look into those feelings, and ask yourself some questions regarding that. And some of us, we come from places where you feel you must appear perfect, simply because you inherited this from your parents. I can't speak for everyone, but I've noticed that in certain family dynamics, the parental figures or structure are very, very strong-willed individuals who have very little emotional compromise or strong emotional resolve, just simply because of upbringing and generational differences. But ultimately, it's hard to replicate. No product is a perfect replication of where it came from. And so, it's important to look at these type of dynamics. She recommends that, can you find patterns of repression in your family? Are there any unresolved family problems or hidden secrets? And coming from an African family background, not African family background, but an African family dynamic, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that nonsense that's going on because, there are always things that are unspoken of. There's always drama and there's always an elephant in the room. Which is always hard to confront, and it results in a lot of cyclical, destructive behavioral patterns simply because there's been no attention being paid to certain issues, right? And so she goes on to mention that rage is repressed because it is rarely appropriate to release it at any point in time. And so she also mentions that repressed rage also gives rise to irrational fear, hate, and bitterness, all of which detrimentally influences your health. And it's interesting because the rage one's very difficult, right? A lot of us are angry, and for various reasons. But it's always interesting. We do so well to suppress that anger, thinking we've controlled it. But honestly, there's always that one point in time where we snap, right? She actually recommended a rage review, and I found that pretty interesting. And she just recommends that you find a quiet place to be, and just study to begin to see how your body is feeling and responds to whatever invokes rage within you, and see the area which is most affected, and find a way to release the tension within that area. Obviously, that solution is not fully, conclusive for me. There has to be probably other outlets, but it's a decent enough recommendation, in my opinion. And so, apologies for the page turning. Oof, that was bad. Apologies for the page turning. The next one is a very difficult one. Grief is also repressed. Grief at that which has been lost, or that which will never be. And those are difficult ones. Everyone has their own experience of grief. She says that without taking time to acknowledge the inner pain, that the pain is real, and when repressed, it can lead to heart and immune system issues. It's difficult because, most grief they always state that grief is most felt within the heart more than anything. And so, be it a heartbreak, a separation, a loss, there are many, many forms of grief, but that one's the one which manifests obviously the deepest. And so, she states that denial, which comes along hand in hand with grief, enables you to convince yourself that everything is fine and that there is no problem. But when beneath the surface, if you dare to look, you'll find mass feelings of trauma, and it's very true. It's very true, and that one requires you to be very honest and vulnerable with yourself to a certain degree. And whenever that comes in whatever form of comfort allows you to indulge grief that way, be it meditation or personal reflection or journaling, but it's important, or psychology, seeing a psychotherapist, there's a lot of factors around that. But whenever we don't bring to conscious the feelings of grief, we leave room for massive pain to strike our immune system. And it's true. We're not invincible. Grief grief takes its toll on everyone. And so, she actually recommends a listen to your body quiz, but I won't go too much to that. I think you'd have to buy the book to see what those recommendations were. But basically, the listen to your body quiz was essentially a handful of questions in which you ask yourself certain things, in terms of trauma. Has there been a recent experience of it within you? In terms of rage, is there anything that has been triggering you or has consistently brought anger out of you, and figuring out what those are in order to, rectify the issue. She also brings up an interesting one at the end of every chapter, which is fringe benefits. I guess this was one of the interesting things about this author. She is very honest and staunch with how she goes about it. She even states that, what are the excuses that, your emotional and mental issues kind of give you freedom from? What aspects of life in general does it prevent you from facing? Certain things, when we're ill, she states that sometimes illness gives you the love and attention that you seek, that you've subconsciously desired. All of a sudden people care about you, whereas before they didn't, And so we kind of dwell in that illness or that sickness simply because we feel that that's the only way to get the love and attention that we desire, which is unhealthy, obviously, but it's coming from a very, very sensitive place. And so, I found this book is a very interesting one. I'll be sharing more chapters, and it gets a bit more in depth, and the issues become a bit more complex, really complex, actually. But I hope you guys enjoyed the chapter. I went into 17 minutes, which was a bit longer than I'd want. But thanks for tuning in. There'll be another episode of Retrospect coming out this weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week, and peace and blessings to the people. Thank you.